Hi everyone, I'm Chelsea, the E-ATP chair for the 2024 conference that's going to be hosted in Berlin next month, the 23rd till the 25th of October. And I'm pleased to introduce you to Donald Clark, the CEO of Wildfire Learning. How are you, Donald?
I'm very well. I'm here in sunny Brighton. Don't be fooled by the accent. I'm not actually in Scotland. I've lived down here for a long time.
I usually have to say that I'm from the northeast of England, but I'm based in London, so I usually have to preface that as well with my northern accent. But before we dig in, basically, I wanted to just ask you a few questions about what we can expect from the E-ATP conference, as you will be our keynote for the opening session. And before we dig in, I just wanted to ask you, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your career, and then we'll dig into the keynote?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm oldish, so I've been around for a while, and I've spent actually almost 40 years now in the learning technologies game, let's call it that broadly. Started a company way back in the day before the internet, using CD-ROMs and that sort of thing for training. That floated that in stock market. That was very, very successful, became quite a big company, and sold that in 2005. And then another sort of startup with a company called Learning Pool for 15 years. We sold that for 200 million in 2021. And that was, again, had a lot of AI stuff in it. But really, the relevance for this particular talk is my work in AI. And there in 2020, I had written a book called AI for Learning, which is here, the original book. And then there's a second edition just out with, you can get that, on Amazon if you want, but I'll be talking about it at the conference anyway. But it was quite prophetic, because I said in the book, this thing's going to come and it's going to be big. And of course, it happened about a few months later and the world exploded. But I've been involved for AI in Wildfire, the company I run at the moment, doing real projects, real stuff, real people, real organizations, since really 2014, which is quite early for this AI stuff, with the early Gen AI models before they were released through OpenAI. But this goes way back. I'd done, I'd completed a project in what was the old version of AI called Expert Systems in the 90s. The technology wasn't good enough there. And then I've also been an investor. So I've invested in AI companies, one of which we had 4 years of research on personalized learning and assessment in Arizona State University. We sold that to Cambridge University. So, and then I've been talking about it, writing about it, but more importantly, doing real projects. In other words, what I tend to do is based on actual work in the field. I'm not just a sort of speaker at conferences, as it were.
And that's what I'm really excited for when we're having you for our conference next month, is that your real life experience and obviously getting in there amongst the industry, you're going to be able to bring lots of real world examples.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To the session. Now, the session, it's AI Changes Everything. Now, it's a very exciting title, and I can see there's lots of different avenues that you'll be able to go down when it comes to the session. But can you give us a glimpse of what we can expect from your keynote?
Sure. Well, it's quite a bold title, and I'm not being deliberately provocative or hyperbolic, because I really do believe it changes everything. Yeah. And in my 40 years in learning and technology, I've never seen anything like this. And that's because it is already, and the evidence is really clear, changing the very nature of work. The studies on productivity and so on are very clear. And because it's changing the very nature of work itself, it may even change the very nature of our species. So this is no small piece of technology. But I think it will change also, because it changes work, it will change what we learn. It will change why we learn, change what we learn, and more importantly, how we learn. That means by implication, because assessment is always a means to an end. You're measuring what has been learned or is known. And it has already, been this massive provocation. That's the word I like to use here. It has provoked an enormous response because institutions are not coping with it well. And that's something I'll be speaking about. That's partly because I think, especially in higher education, where all the debate seems to be about plagiarism and essays, we actually have, in a sense, suffered for many, many years from a very poor monolithic form of assessment by people who have very little background in assessment. In fact, writing an essay prompt is relatively simple, of course. Marking essays or really teaching people or doing formative assessment is an entirely different thing. But I think just as it's changing learning, it will change why we assess, it will change what we assess, and it will change how we assess. So this is very timely. It's also timely because over the last 2 years, we've had these massive releases. And since we last spoke, Chelsea, we've had another massive release, which has a chain of thought reasoning on it. So it is very timely, this conference, because we're finally getting to a position where a different species of intelligence allows us to discuss it in relation to assessment. And that is that this technology, I've been playing with, it's only been out for 3 days. I've spent a lot of time just diving into the thing. Because it has reasoning and planning, then it can critique and do things in formative assessment that were not possible before. So every time we turn our heads, there's a new kid on the block.
Yeah, let's see, Donald, we've got about, 6 weeks now, if something else pops up, and there'll be something new to explore.
And undoubtedly, because the interesting thing about this market is you get these pre-release, not perfect products, but they put products into the market for people to try out, which is what 0-1 is. But the others have to respond. So, the competitive race is fierce. It's all coming from the US, of course. All the technology is US-based, but I think what's really important for the conference is not to get fixated too much by what is AI, what is the technology, is to think really about the hardcore implications for assessment. And there's one thing I will be discussing, which I think is of real interest, because I've been following a lot of the research reports and big surveys and how are people using AI, in education or in the workplace. And one of the big surprises are a lot of people, almost everybody's using it on the sly. Because institutions have reacted badly to the provocation, in other words, well, what about academic integrity? It's just, that's the debate in higher education. Then what's happened is that the institutions themselves have become the bottlenecks for this, but actually it's like a rising tide that doesn't ebb. People are just using this stuff all the time because it's so powerful in terms of productivity and efficacy. In the workplace, in schools, in higher education, in colleges. And I'll be showing some of that data, big surveys from places like Harvard and so on, showing that 95% of the students are using it. And they're using it on the sly. They're not telling anyone.
Yeah.
Other institutions are actually just buying licenses for everyone. This is all in the US, I should say, hardly any activity in Europe. But things are happening very, very quickly on this AI changes everything premise.
Yeah, definitely. And we've just firmed up the rest of our program, and there will be a lot of other sessions about the sort of legal implications of AI, etc. So I'm very excited to dig into those sessions as well. But just to go back on a point you mentioned before about how AI will impact, the types of assessments, etc. Because I can even think myself of, the content creation piece. There is a lot of technology companies within the assessment space now creating content creation tools, even the way we look at translating for more mass scale assessments to be able to reach a larger pool of people using AI translations. And then there's even the AI marking piece as well for essay questions. So it's just a full scope, isn't it?
Well, that's right. Although all the emphasis has been on the detection of plagiarism, the other side of the coin, as you rightly explained there, Chelsea, is that there is an absolute renaissance in people who sometimes have not got any formal training in assessment, because actually that's the majority of people in higher education. They haven't had any training in it. Teachers in secondary schools more so, but still quite slight. They now have at their fingertips tools that can create assessments. And I don't mean multiple choice questions, because and it does that very well. We've been building these tools, even on multiple choice questions, you can create 100 in 10 seconds. And as long as you've got all the good pedagogy built into the prompting behind the scenes, they will be good multiple choice questions, not the rather statistically skewed things you get if you look at most even high stakes tests and MCQs. But then, as you rightly said there, you're ahead of the game there. Most teachers teach through open input. They ask people questions and you get an open response from that person's memory and experience. And there it's getting very good. Some really interesting studies about how it's on a par with human marking on short answer questions. But you can certainly produce assessments, the rubrics, even giving critiques of itself. That's what this new stuff does, the chain of thought stuff. So the world is opening up to people being able to assess to a much higher quality because they have almost an assessment expert at their fingertips. That's never been possible for most people before.
Yeah, it's such an exciting or interesting time, shall we say. And as you rightly put, AI does change everything. It has impacted a lot so far. And going forward, I look forward to definitely hearing more on your opinions on what else it will impact and change in the future as well.
Yeah. As I said, I think there is very little that won't change because of this. And
Yeah.
that's why I gave that sort of what seems like a hyperbolic title. But I think everyone who attends this conference will already have been thinking deeply about the topic, been touched by it. Most will have used it. That says a lot about this technology, the fastest adopted piece of technology in the history of our species.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Donald, let's not give too much away. Let's leave some excitement and anticipation for your session. We're really looking forward to hosting you at the conference in Berlin next month. If you guys haven't signed up yet, tickets are still available, and hotel spots are also available online. We're staying at the Hilton Berlin, so please go to our website and check it out for more info. Thanks so much, Donald.
Thank you.